Hey, I want to talk about speaking in tongues, right? So speaking in tongues, the only examples we have of speaking in tongues in the Bible, right, is basically, speaking in foreign languages in Acts chapter 2 and, throughout the scriptures. That's the only example of the nature of the gift. So speaking in tongues in the Bible, the nature was that it was speaking in foreign human languages. And in 1 Corinthians, obviously, the situation is not the same as we have it in Acts chapter 2, right? So and Paul says, look, you're not speaking to people, but you're not speaking to men, but you're speaking to God, meaning that, look, in Acts chapter 2, the people who understood the languages from all over the world were present. But in 1 Corinthians, you only have the church at Corinth, so clearly at that point, the circumstances are different. So now you speak, it's basically, only God knows what you're saying. So you're speaking to God, and the people there, if nobody's there to interpret or translate the language, then clearly, just sit down, right? That's what Paul says. But somebody might say, yeah, but I mean, what about where he says, you're speaking, Paul says, obviously, speaking in tongues of men and of angels, but you don't have love. Now, in 1 Corinthians 13, verses 1 and 2, he says that. But notice he also says that even if I had the gift of prophecy and I knew all mysteries and understood all knowledge and knew all language knowledge and stuff like that, but then you have to look at 1 Corinthians 13 and verse 9 to get it. Because in 1 Corinthians 13 and verse 9, Paul says the fact is that nobody with the gift of prophecy, obviously knows all knowledge and knows all mystery. So there you can see that Paul was just being rhetorical. So the fact is nobody with the gift of prophecy knows all knowledge. So what's the point? The point is those gifts do not, even exist. Paul is trying to express, what love is. He's not trying to explain the gifts. For example, those people were the same, just like they're humans, just like us. We also have the same similarities. Like it's just that they didn't have advanced technology like we do, but they're humans just like us. So they used to express themselves like the way we still express ourselves. So, for example, today we would say something like, and it's popular, we would say something like, hey, I would, even if you love someone to the moon and back, even if you love her to the moon and back. Obviously, if you're going to be honest, you think about that for a second. I mean, that would suggest that you have to love somebody, take them out to the moon, like for a date on the moon and then back. Like that wouldn't even make sense, and we don't do that. But that's just an example of how we can express love. So that's the same thing that Paul does, when he's expressing, love in that sense. Just give me a minute. How's it, boss? All right. Yeah. So you can just add Petro, yeah? Android. Yeah. So that would be the same thing that Paul does, in 1 Corinthians 13, when he talks about love and stuff like that. And so nobody can use that as an example. And even talking about that, it's not the same thing, because now if you're talking about that, what we're saying is like, look, you cannot say that gifts still exist today, speaking in tongues, for example, because nobody's practicing that. Nobody's practicing speaking in tongues, because what people call speaking in tongues today is just making sounds, ecstatic utterances, and they call that speaking in tongues. But when we look at speaking in tongues in the Bible, it was speaking in foreign languages. So even by that, it's not the same thing in the Bible. So obviously that would mean that, that gift does not exist today, and so, yeah, I just wanted to get that out of the way. Thanks, man. Yeah, you can just check it out. Yeah? Just check it out. But I think it's cool. Yeah, so I just wanted to get that clear, All right.